Welcome back to the Fluffycon tournament. We're in game 4. It's the second day, and the first picture you're looking at isn't actually of my first game of the round. It's the table next to where I was playing, and it's the two Bretonnian players that got the worst comp score. On the bottom side of the river here, this guy had the toughest army of the tournament, and the guy facing him had one of the other toughest armies of the tournament. I think with Bretonnians, that I've said this before, I think earlier on, but in a normal tournament, they don't do quite as well because they don't really have anything in their list which just fits with this whole 8th edition style. And when they crush into your big blocks with their knights, if they're up against a big grinding mob of 50 marauders with great weapons, or 25 chaos warriors with hand weapon shield, mark of Zinch and some characters in them, or demons or something like that, they aren't really going to come out on top. But in Fluffycon, these guys really, I felt as though they'd taken armies which had the elements of a normal Bretonnian list, but with the sort of the red flags, like the items and things tweaked out of them, but still giving them just enough to really sweep aside other people at this tournament, which I felt really disappointed by. It turned out that in Game 4 they were at the top of the tables, number 1 and number 2, not surprisingly, but had drawn each other. Also, the mission they had selected or had been given was the Battle for the Pass scenario, and funnily enough there was a river in between, so quite hilarious that whichever guy decides to cross the river is going to sink with his knights and have no ranks, so predictably this turned into a draw. Just to give you guys a bit of a spoiler as to the end of the tournament, neither of these guys' players ranked in the top 3. They got beaten by other opponents and got murdered on army composition score. They deserved it. Going to the next picture, onto something a little bit more positive. It's me against Paul in round 4. Now, I was very relieved to have drawn Paul, not because I don't think highly of Paul as an opponent. Paul's a great player and he's done well to be in the top third of players in the second day, but I was relieved to face him because again, as I said, wasn't against one of the Bretonnian players, wasn't up against any of the really tough matchups that I was trying to avoid in the final day, and this meant that after this game I'd only have to compete against 2 other potentially hard opponents. The other thing going for me here is that I've got my best mission for this army, which is Battle for the Pass. Making it even better is there's a massive forest and a swamp in the middle of the field, and all I've got to do here is just hang back and shoot at him. So it looks like a dream come true for the Empire. Don't underestimate this though, because looking at his army, he's got maybe 6 or 7 combat units which my units just can't beat. And of course, I have nowhere near enough firepower to actually destroy everything. So it is actually going to be a hard game. Don't think of this as a sort of walkover given sort of mission, because he's got a wizard with Law of Fire, which can really do a lot of damage to my lightly armoured infantry. He's got a Shaggoth, which again is going to thunderstomp a lot of my guys without much sort of retaliation. He's got a unit of knights, marauders, chaos warriors of Khorne, ogres of Khorne, another unit of ogres with great weapons, and some redirecting units. So played well, he could easily thrash the pants off me. Go to the next image, you can see Paul's side of the field. He's deployed a Shaggoth in the extreme right, hoping to swing around the flank. He told me after we played that his plan with the Shaggoth was just to move forward, and if he lost wounds on it due to the cannon shot, he'd just pull it back behind the hill and hide it. But we'll see what actually happens. Going to the next picture, it's me going first, luckily, and what I've decided to do is move the knights in between these 2 mushroom patches, which are counted as difficult terrain, and simply fire the war machines off at his guys on my left flank, and just really hang back, using the the wizard to cast Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma to subtract D3 from his movement, slowing him down, giving me as many shots as possible. Into the next photo, that's exactly what I've done. In Paul's turn 1, he's moved his ogres into the forest, -3 from their movement, luckily for me. Turns out to be a fungus forest, although with his leadership 8 rerolls, he should be passing that. Shaggoth charges around the flank, having dodged a cannonball for the first shot, so that was quite lucky. Fortunately for me, though, the Hellstorm rocket battery going off yet again, as it has done so many times this tournament, and shattering about 10 Chaos Marauders in that big unit out back. Also doing some damage to some of his Marauder horsemen. Next image, Paul's elected to send his warhounds into the swamp, discovering that it's a type of swamp that kills you if you fail initiative tests as well. So very bad. He's avoiding the swamp with his knights, even though they have initiative 5. You wouldn't want to lose any knights in that situation. And heading around with his other redirectors, charging forward with whatever he can into that middle. And I've got my pistoliers hung back here, ready to do what they can. They've actually had a bit of a skirmish against his Marauder unit, and they've come out on top. He's actually been firing at me with some magic spells as well from a sorcerer, doing a little bit of damage, but nothing, too unbearable. Next image, my Hellstorm rocket battery goes off, and if you can see in the middle of the photo, the scatter dice and the 8 on the artillery dice has sent the rockets after the misfire occurred, of course, onto my own Flaggellants, which was bound to happen in a tournament like this. With firing it, six times a game, you're going to eventually have this result, and it blew up maybe a third of the Flaggellants in this unit, which was hilarious, I've got to say, even though it was on me. Next image, he's moved forward with his hounds. And this means that really I have to shoot at the hounds first, and then it's going to be a matter of dealing with his knights somehow. If he gets the knights charging in, then of course he's going to sweep me away, but if I get to charge him, I've got quite a high strength attack with hatred on my knights, and of course if I can cast Mind Razor on that unit as well, that should make a massive difference, and I should be able to take that combat quite handily. Next image, I've got a unit of handgunners in the forest, which happens to be a venom thicket, so as long as they don't move, they don't have to take dangerous terrain tests, but they are able to shoot out of the forest. Even though they're having to shoot through about 12 to 14 inches worth of forest that actually hit the plague ogres, as I like to think of them, ogres with the mark of Nurgle, the rules specifically state that you don't actually suffer cover, subtractions if you are firing from within a forest at a unit outside of the forest. So as weird as it seems, they were able to shoot at the ogres without too much problem. But of course, what they were actually shooting at were the hounds. And really drastically, and we were both shocked by this, the hounds were destroyed in one round, causing the Chaos Knights to flee in panic, having failed 2 consecutive leadership 8 checks in a row. It's not unheard of. It is possible to do that. It's not astronomically low in terms of the statistics, but it isn't likely at all. Bit of a slap in the face for Paul, really, with his knights fleeing and essentially not participating in this game. So that's really going to subtract from the excitement of this battle report, unfortunately. But there you have it, knights fleeing, and not wiping out my flank. Next image, here's a shot of them actually just recovering behind the impassable terrain. Maybe, actually they didn't take any casualties, but this completely means that they have no role to play in the battlefield whatsoever, so I can focus on other problems at hand. Next image, he has connected with the handgunners here with his ogres, and I've stood and shoot, managed to do a couple of wounds after a couple of rounds. And what happens here is that if he breaks through that handgunner unit and hits the swordsman behind, it gives me a chance to actually cast spells on my magic phase before the preceding combat, giving me a chance to really subtract from his weapon skill, or perhaps give me Mind Razor, maybe with a flanking charge from the general. Funnily enough, though, I think what actually happened here is that I held for a round just because I've got... I had a steadfast, actually. I can't remember what happened. I think he broke through, but not too relevant in terms of the overall scheme of things. In the next photo, he's got a Shaggoth who has survived cannonball after cannonball, not actually hitting him at all over here. And what he's done is he's actually caused my Halberdiers Detachment to flee past the Swordsmen and then off the border later on. The Swordsmen have been continually backing up, and of course he did try charging me in one turn but failed his charge distance, and luckily I passed my terror check. But I've got my Flaggellants coming in around here, and if I can take off some wounds with a cannon, I might be able to get some points off this thing. But if I just go in with Flaggellants without any backup, he probably will stomp all the Flaggellants to death in the end. In the background there, I've managed to slow down his Khorne ogres with a bit of shooting and a bit of a speed bump there in the form of my detachment. I've been giving away units here and there, and he's been bombarding me with fire spells, so he's actually a few points ahead of me here. And behind that there's a forest where his Chaos Warriors are situated. Really, the Chaos Warriors have been eliminated from the game as well, without me getting points to them, of course, because the fireworks gunners, I've called it, the Hellstorm rocket battery, has connected with them a few times, depleting their unit. but they're just placed around the forest. You can see where the models are. He can't actually position his models because the trees are in the way. Next image is pretty much the same thing with the Flaggellants in a different position. They've moved around in front of the Shaggoth, and in the following shooting phase, the cannon connects with the Shaggoth, doing 5 wounds on it, leaving it with just 1 wound. So at that point we knew that the Shaggoth had no chance of beating the Flaggellants because they'd just attack back and kill him. And the good thing about this is that it protects my Swordsman from behind from being charged and having to take a terror check there. So in the following turn, Paul simply opted to just head back towards his own line with the Shaggoth. Next image, the Knights have turned around, hopefully to try and intercept those Khorne Ogres who have basically been cut half in points. The Plague Ogres have wiped out the Handgunners and are now facing both units of Swordsmen here, so the plan there is to actually do some damage. Earlier on in this game I actually killed my own wizard with a miscast, so I don't have Occam's Mindrazor available in this situation, but I'm hoping to do some serious damage anyway. Going to the next image, the Ogres of Khorne here charge the Hellblaster Hellstorm rocket battery, destroying it and pursuing, overrunning out of the Knight's charge arc. So that denied me some points there and got him a good 115 or whatever the War Machine was worth. So again, behind on points, so actually feeling very nervous that I'm going to lose this game by a narrow margin simply because Paul's kept his units alive and I haven't. Next image, his Chaos Ogres fighting around against his Swordsmen, and of course me completing my Steadfast 7 check with flying colours. And just before the game ends, the Flaggellants head out and take out the Shaggoth, and my Swordsmen charge in the flank and sweep these Ogres out, so picking up a good 500 or 600 points in just the last turn alone. Turning it around marginally, giving me just barely a win in this game 4, 11 points to 9. Almost a draw, but managed to pull it out of the bag at the end. Originally I thought I was going to be able to take the win by beating his Knights in close combat with help of a spell, but it just didn't happen that way. Cannon didn't really do as much damage earlier on as it could have, but later on it made up for that. And of course the Hellstorm rocket battery not really affecting anything either. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We're going to go on to some more games very shortly.